Mary had a little lamb. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I am pleased that we have reached an agreement to review at least some of the evidence underlying the Mueller report, including interview notes, first-hand accounts of misconduct, and other critical evidence, and that this material will be made available without delay to members of the committee on both sides of the aisle.
Chairman of the Judiciary Committee today, Jerry Nadler, announcing that finally Congress has succeeded in prying loose from the Justice Department at least some of the underlying evidence that Robert Mueller and his team turned up in the course of their investigation. Congress, the Judiciary Committee specifically, has been demanding this ever since word crossed that Mueller had completed his investigation. Nadler made that announcement that some of the underlying material is finally being handed over. He announced that today just as the committee was convening its first hearing on Mueller's findings. Joining us now is Rhode Island Congressman David Cicilline, who's a Democrat on that Judiciary Committee. Sir, I really appreciate you being here tonight. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
So what are you guys getting in terms of underlying evidence from Mueller's report? What do you expect you'll actually get to see?
Well, we'll get witness statements, 302s, which are FBI reports. We'll get all of the documents really that are referenced in the Mueller report that support the findings of the special counsel. That work began today. The committee staff was over at the DOJ, an initial show of good faith, looking at some initial documents. And over the next several days, the protocols will be established for the members to be able to go there and begin our review.
And is the Justice Department deciding on a case-by-case, document-by-document basis what you're going to see? Or are you guys getting now all of the 302s, for example, all of the whole categories of information?
It is my understanding that all of those documents will be provided. Obviously, we're going to have a vote tomorrow on the civil contempt citation so that if there is a disagreement about documents not being furnished, we will have the mechanism to go to court and compel their production. But we expect that all the documents we've requested, save for the grand jury testimony, which, of course, tomorrow we will authorize the committee chair to initiate civil proceedings to obtain the grand jury proceedings as well.
All right, so here's where we are right now. The House is voting on the civil suit, okay? It's no longer a contempt citation, okay? Because yesterday, Attorney General Bill Barr decided that he would turn over what he thinks are just enough Mueller documents to avoid a contempt citation. So, at least one member of the Trump cabinet is living within the law, if only technically, right? Barr knows what it takes to avoid being thrown in jail. And when you work for the Trump administration, it's a good skill to have. And he has that. So right now, with 20 seconds left on the clock, the House lawmakers are voting to enforce subpoenas for Attorney General Barr and former White House counsel Don McGahn, the man who John Dean was in the Nixon administration, who put himself on the line yesterday in those hearings, which nobody decided to cover except for us. Holy crap, man, that was not on the TV. I mean, here you had the opening, attempt to educate the American people on the fact that Volume 1, the collusion/conspiracy portion, did not find no collusion. In fact, what it found was evidence of collusion, 100+ contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian government officials, but because the obstruction worked and people lied to Congress and lied to the special prosecutor and lied to the FBI and destroyed documents and used encrypted apps, that Mueller could not prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And then in Volume 2, he lays out what the obstruction consisted of and finds that the president engaged in a massive conspiracy to obstruct justice. So, what I will say, I just want to explain to you now. So McGahn was subpoenaed to testify, and Donald Trump has issued these blanket, executive he has no executive privilege. Don McGahn doesn't. Why? Because he talked to Mueller for 30 hours, and then the Mueller investigation was made public. That's where the claim of executive privilege evaporates. Okay, so, I mean, this is all BS. So what the House is voting on now is its ability to go to court to get a civil suit started in case Bill Barr does not produce the documents that they have subpoenaed. A civil suit, a lawsuit. That's what they're reserving the right to do today, should Barr fail. McGahn, on the other hand, that is a contempt citation, a civil contempt citation, and I don't know if that's going to persuade anybody to go and testify. I'm not really sure, but what I can say is, if you really want to avoid contempt, you're too late. You're too late. You should have answered the subpoena in the first place. You could have answered it months ago. You could still, avoid the legal definition of contempt by showing up. Now, I will tell you, tomorrow, Junior, after saying he would never, and I'm not going, and I don't want, he's going to appear behind closed doors. We won't get to see that either. So, note to cable, you don't even have to cover it tomorrow, because it won't be on the TV. But Junior is going to go to the Intelligence Committee and testify behind closed doors again after saying he would never go back there. He wouldn't testify again. He's going to, and likely because his lawyers have advised him that he needs to correct the record, or else he will be found guilty of perjury, committing perjury, lying to Congress. And that's an ongoing matter, according to the redactions in the Mueller report. So I'll bet you this is why Junior is going. You do get a chance if you commit perjury to correct the record. Everything in the law is a big, long-ass negotiation. Trust me, I know all about it. And so I'm sure that's why Junior is going to show up tomorrow at the Intelligence Committee. Meanwhile, let's talk about us for a brief moment. Okay, here is, looks like still there's votes being cast, even though the time has run out. It looks like 130 yay votes from Democrats, 118 no votes from Republicans, to vote to enforce the subpoenas for Barr to produce the documents that he agreed to produce yesterday and more. And then also today, you should know, the committee is going to vote to give Gerald Nadler the authority to go to the court and ask the court to release the grand jury materials. Now, Bill Barr could have done that too. Bill Barr could have, this is what Ken Starr did. Ken Starr, when he released the Starr report, he went to the court and asked the court to make all the grand jury testimony available to the public. But because Bill Barr, the Attorney General, will not do it, because Mueller didn't do it, now we have to ask the House Judiciary Committee chairman to go to the court, and my best guess is the court will make that public. So we're about to get a document up. We're about to get a lot of information that we didn't have. And it's very important that we do, because, again, I explained to you, they're going to tell you, only, 18% of the report was redacted. But, after Donald Trump Jr. refuses to testify to Mueller, there's a redaction. So what does that mean? Does that mean that he refused to testify because he invoked his Fifth Amendment right? Does it mean he refused to testify because he's guilty? What does it mean? And there are portions in there about why Mueller didn't pursue a sit-down with Donald Trump. It's like I said, and I'll say it one more time. If you had a contract in front of you and somebody was asking you to enter into an agreement, and the contract said, insert your name, may not, and then listed a whole bunch of things like you can't curse on terrestrial radio. You must stay within the FCC regulation. You may not curse. And I crossed out not. It's just a fraction of the sentence, but it changes the entire message of the agreement. And that's why we need to get all of these materials. Now, I have to tell you, Trump was on a roll. Butter that giant orange ass. He was on a roll in front of the White House today, just trashing Biden, trashing John Dean, calling everybody a loser, and saying he's got a secret agreement with Mexico, and waving around a piece of paper. What?
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
The special counsel's team wasn't able to find collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, but apparently you did.
So Mueller in his report is careful to clarify that he's not making any decision about collusion. That is a far cry from saying that there was no evidence of collusion. There's abundant evidence of collusion in this record.
You said, I think this case is far worse than Watergate. Obviously, you were wrong that there was conspiracy or collusion with Russia. Do you admit to that?
I agree that Robert Mueller concluded that he could not establish the technical crime of conspiracy. However, I do think it was worse than Watergate. I think this president worked with Russia. The report says that the investigation identified numerous links between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. It also says that the investigation established that the Russian government perceived that it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome.
Because I only have 25 seconds left.
Reclaiming my time. If you're going to read from the Mueller report, I am definitely reclaiming my time.
Oh my God! Now I would have given a bigger rousing, applause if they would have aired the damn hearing. They didn't air the hearing. Nobody did. CNN didn't. MSNBC didn't. And of course, faux news. Oh God, no! They're going to read from the Mueller report. We're not airing that. We're not going to air what Mueller actually found with regard to collusion or the fact that we were onto a conspiracy to defraud the United States of America by the Trump campaign with over 100 contacts with Russian government officials. But the obstruction worked. And therefore, let's now move on to how they conspired to commit obstruction of justice and show you that that's the reason why we couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there was a conspiracy. But collusion is definitely in there and proved. It's just not a legal term, as we've all learned. Okay, so the House just voted. They agreed to the resolution to enforce the subpoenas for Attorney General Barr and former White House counsel Don McGahn. The vote seems to be, well, they're still voting. Right now, it takes 218 to pass, so we're beyond that. We're 228 Democratic votes, 191 Republican no votes. Doesn't look like any single Republican voted yes to hold the Attorney General of the United States to a higher, to a standard of you have to cooperate as the attorney for the people of the United States with the people's house. I mean, it's just, wow. This is unfreaking believable. It's just the strangest Republican Party you've ever experienced in your life. These people have become Donald Trump. They have literally morphed into him. And I'm guessing it's because they were briefed on the Russian interference in our election while it was underway, while it was ongoing. It seems to be ongoing right now, too, according to the testimony from our intelligence community, that they're still in there. They're still trying. They're still succeeding. They're still hacking. We know that a whole bunch of license plates and facial recognition photographs at the border have been hacked. And, I don't know, what anybody, I don't know who hacked it, and I don't know what anybody would want with, border photos of, legitimate Americans going back and forth and their license plates at the legal ports of entry. I don't know. But it's been hacked. So obviously it's ongoing. So the Republicans knew during the election that that was going on too, that there was hacking and that the stolen material that WikiLeaks was posting was stolen by Russian military intelligence. And they decided it would help them. They decided this was a positive for them. And so they decided not to say anything. And Mitch McConnell, who is the Grim Reaper, the guy who presides over the Senate, where every single piece of legislation the House has passed, and they passed a whole bunch of stuff, contrary to lying Trump, they passed a whole bunch of stuff. They passed gun background checks, comprehensive ones. They passed clean election bill, H.R. 1. They passed, voting rights in H.R. 1. They passed the Dream and Promise Act, H.R. 6. There's a ton of legislation, and the Senate refuses to take it up because Mitch McConnell is the self-declared Grim Reaper, and he won't do it. He won't bring anything to the floor. He won't let anybody vote on anything. And it was at Mitch McConnell's direction that no Republican in the Senate who was briefed on the ongoing hacking of the Democratic Party and voter registration rolls in this country by Russian military intelligence, he would not sign on to a joint statement that was going on during the election so that our government could, in a bipartisan manner, tell the American people that was happening, that was true, and to be extra cautious when responding to things about Hillary Clinton dying or the Pizzagate bullcrap or any of the the routine memes that were going out, that they were created by Russian intelligence officers, and that some people out there, were being called to attend rallies for Trump organized by the GRU, organized by Russian military intelligence. So Mitch McConnell decided he didn't want you to know that and instructed everybody of the Republican persuasion to shut up about it. And this is why these people have to go. So this morning, I retweeted Donald Trump, who's saying it's the Democrats. They want open borders, and they don't want this, and they don't. They're the ones that passed an immigration bill. Remember, Dianne Feinstein, and this is the reason why you can't do business with Donald Trump. It started right here when Dianne Feinstein sat in the Roosevelt Room with Donald Trump and his cabinet and her counterparts in the House and asked, would you do a clean DACA bill? Because then we could do comprehensive immigration reform. They have a bill. We have had a bill since 2013, a bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform package. And Trump was all excited about it. And then the Freedom Crackers decided that they would tell him, oh, no.
And I don't know how you would feel about this, but I'd like to ask the question, what about a clean DACA bill now, with a commitment that we go into a comprehensive immigration reform procedure like we did back, I remember when Kennedy was here, and it was really a major effort, and it was a great disappointment that it went nowhere.
I have no problem. I think that's basically what Dick is saying. We're going to come out with DACA. We're going to do DACA, and then we can start immediately on the phase 2, which would be comprehensive.
Would you be agreeable to that?
Yeah, I would like to do that. Go ahead. I think a lot of people would like to see that.
Yeah, we would.
But I think we have to do DACA first.
Mr. President, you need to be clear, though. I think what Senator Feinstein's asking here, when we talk about just DACA, we don't want to be back here 2 years later. You have to have security, as the Secretary would tell you.
But I think that's what she's saying.
I think she's saying something different.
And that was the end of comprehensive immigration reform. And there is a bill. And so what happened? The House did DACA. The House just passed a clean DACA bill. Okay. And it's not just for dreamers. It's also for people who are here under temporary protected status, which would include, let's say, the pressure of a group, Haitians, who are here because their country has had major disasters, one after the other.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
It's quite striking and startling to me that history is repeating itself, and with a vengeance. So that's why I've spoken out.
The facts contained in that report would be sufficient to prove all of the elements necessary to charge multiple counts of obstruction of justice.
The conduct described in the report constitutes multiple crimes of obstruction of justice. I'm confident that if anyone other than a sitting president committed this conduct, that person would be charged with crimes.
That was an amazing amount of testimony yesterday about a criminal president who currently thinks that he's got emergency powers and that he can, just sidestep Congress. He doesn't have to do any, and this whole secret plan with Mexico is based on an illegal concept. And what is that concept? That the Donald has the authority to level tariffs against anyone. That's just not true. It's just not real. It's a fake premise. So it's what I used to tell you: garbage in, garbage out. If you begin the conversation about Donald Trump's, win with a secret deal with Mexico, I mean, you think about how much this is like Nixon. He had a secret plan to end the war in Vietnam. Does anybody remember that? Yeah, that's how Nixon decided he was going to run, for his second term. He had a secret plan to end the war in Vietnam. And now Donald Trump has a secret plan to end immigration from the Northern Triangle with Mexico. And it's not true. And he says that he did it by threatening tariffs. But do you think the Mexicans are really stupid? Do you think that they don't understand that the U.S. Senate, who does absolutely nothing at all, ever? Nothing. It's a graveyard over there. They'd have 3-day work weeks, and then they go to Normandy, and then they come back, and maybe they, sign a couple of, declarations of this or that. They do nothing. They do absolutely nothing. There is a comprehensive immigration reform bill sitting there. There's a DACA bill sitting there. There's an election protection bill sitting there. There is a gun background check bill sitting there. I mean, the House has done amazing stuff. There's a new Green New Deal sitting there. They won't even debate it. I mean, you could disagree with it. That's fine. But they won't even debate it. They won't even take it up. They do absolutely nothing. But they were ready to vote to stop Donald Trump from putting tariffs on Mexico. All it takes is what they call a resolution of disapproval. And if they vote a resolution of disapproval and say that Donald Trump did not have the authority, nor will he have the authority to put tariffs on Mexico, the president could veto it, but they believed, and they said so, that they had a veto-proof override vote. They had 67 votes in the Senate to take that, to keep that power for themselves, which Donald Trump does not have. Okay, so you have this criminal president who thinks he doesn't have to do anything constitutionally. He just disregards, everything, and then just waves pieces of paper that say this piece of paper has the secret deal with Mexico on it. This was insane. Okay, this is not crazy. This is not nuts. This is insanity, what he did today.
That's the agreement that everybody says I don't have. So, no, because I'm going to let Mexico do the announcement at the right time.
What?
From Mexico, they want to go through, but here's the agreement. It's a very simple agreement. This is one page. This is one page of a very long and very good agreement for both Mexico and the United States. Without the tariffs, we would have had nothing. We had nothing 2 weeks ago. Mexico told us absolutely, I don't know where the Times got the story, but I think they got it probably for somebody that worked here and said, oh, how well they would do. Well, for a long time, for many years, people tried to get what we got in a period of a couple of days, and they couldn't get it. That's the difference. They couldn't get it. So Mexico, we're getting along with them great. Marcelo and the president and all of them are getting along great. They've started a very strong action. They're moving right now 6,000 soldiers to their southern border. Whoever heard of that? You think we had that 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I'll tell you what we had. We had nothing. And the reason we had nothing is because Mexico felt they didn't have to give us anything. I don't blame them. But this is actually ultimately going to be good for Mexico, too. And it's good for the relationship of Mexico with us. So here's your thing. They all say, oh, he doesn't. I just give you my word. Inside here, and I would love to do it, but you will freeze action it, you will stop it, you will analyze it, every single letter you'll see. But in here is the agreement.
You're an idiot.
He is an idiot. My whole life, he said the biggest part of the deal with Mexico has not been yet revealed. We'll see what happens. it's more honest to say the secret deal with Mexico hasn't been exposed. What Mexico, according to Marcelo, who's Marcelo? Marcelo is the Mexican foreign secretary. He's sort of the Secretary of State of Mexico, okay? Marcelo Ebrard, okay? He held up his own sheet of paper, and he pointed to the publicly announced details of the agreement and said there is no other thing beyond what I've just explained. And what he's explained is that Mexico in March created a newly formed National Guard. Mexico did not have a National Guard. And back in March, Mexico created a National Guard. That National Guard was created by the new president that's lovingly called AMLO, okay, President Obrador, to help Mexico fight crime. They're having a problem there with organized crime. And so the National Guard was tasked with organized crime. And Donald Trump wants those National Guardsmen sent down to, like Chiapas, down to the border with Guatemala. Except they've not been trained in anything regarding border enforcement, just like our National Guard hasn't been trained in border enforcement, nor are they permitted to do border enforcement. Here.
Maybe you were expecting to see military trucks and troops on the border. They're not here. Instead of hunting human traffickers or drug smugglers, Sergeant Francisco Robles is tracking down a pickup truck's electrical problem. He's a mechanic in the Border Patrol motor pool in Nogales.
The sleeves.
Specialist Gerardo Duran is at the border. But instead of a rifle, he's got a welding torch. Some National Guard troops have even served by cleaning the stalls at Border Patrol stables.
That's what our National Guard is doing down there. And Donald Trump has tasked our National Guard with painting a stretch of fence, painting with paintbrushes. It's the Huckleberry Finn Brigade, right? I mean, is there a patch for that? I mean, I can't even believe it. In the dead of summer, this is what our National, because they're not trained in border enforcement, nor they're permitted. Same thing with Mexico. It's ridiculous. And all that's been agreed to is to revisit the issue 45 days from now with Mexico. And then they'll have a little look-see in 90 days to see if immigration has been tamped down, which normally it does happen in the summer because it's too freaking hot.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Mexico's foreign minister says there was no secret agreement beyond what was announced on Friday. What do you mean in your tweet?
Well, we have an agreement on something that they will announce very soon. It's all done. And they have to get approval, and they will get approval. If they don't get approval, we'll have to think in terms of tariffs or whatever, but it's just another aspect of what we've done. It was all done because of the tariffs and because of the relationship that we have with Mexico. I spoke with the president yesterday. And by the way, I was with the president of France the other day, too. I saw that. And he's a great guy. Emmanuel. He's a great guy. So we had a great conversation the other day. And I think you're going to see some real action. Sad that when you think of it, Mexico is doing more for the United States as of now than Congress and then specifically the Democrats. They have to get their act together. They have to work and get something done because you got a tremendous problem at the border. You have people pouring in, and it means crime, it means drugs, it means so many other things. We're building the wall. We're going to have close to 500 miles of wall built by the end of next year. That's a lot, and we're moving along very rapidly. We won the big court case, as you know, the other day, and that was a big victory for us. So a lot of good things are happening, but I want to thank Mexico, and we do have one other thing that will be announced at the appropriate time, but they have to get approval from their legislative body.
He's lying. I'm shocked, but he is. He's lying because he likes this issue for him. This is his election issue. Immigration and making people hate Haggard, Honduran, housewives and their toddlers. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked about this secret plan.
The deal, there's more troops at the border. We know there's going to be money to give these would-be illegals that are trying for asylum in our country.
What?
Some type of a job opportunity. They're supposed to get health care. They're supposed to get shelter in Mexico. I get it. Now, there's some talk about this third country deal that could be in the works that Mexico has to pass through their legislature. And that the president indicated it's there. Nobody else says it's really there. Can you tell us what other side deal could be coming our way?
Look, I'm not going to get ahead of President Trump or the president of Mexico in making further announcements, but we have had discussions, and you can see even in the joint statement that they released where they said that within the next 90 days further action could be announced and that we will continue those discussions. That's exactly what we're doing. That's exactly what we're talking about. And we've already got agreements on the way for other action that will help, again, solidify Mexico's commitment to stop illegal immigrants from coming across our southern border.
It takes your breath away. Sam Donaldson literally got this right. Listen.
Look, I've had the pleasure of working with almost every press secretary, beginning with Pierre Salinger in John F. Kennedy's administration. And except for Ron Ziegler, who lied for Richard Nixon, I've never seen anything like this with Sarah Sanders. And there's a difference. Ziegler lied about one thing, the question of whether the President of the United States was covering up the Watergate burglary and all the questions that had to do with that. But if you ask him a question about foreign policy, domestic policy, some other sector, he would try to say what he thought the facts were, and it would often be truthful. On the other hand, Sarah Sanders simply lies about everything, taking a cue from her boss, not just one thing. I think she's had an Oscar, Lifetime Achievement Oscar for lying. And let's face it, I don't know her. I feel a little sorry for her because it's the boss who does it. She takes the cue from him. Leadership begins at the top, and so does all of the bad things that happen in the administration.
Sad. It's just so sad. I mean, these are the biggest liars I've ever seen come down the pike. And, you know, all Mexico said is that it would discuss further measures if crackdowns on Central American immigrants don't work in the near future, and whether or not they, quote, work is really a function of whether or not Donald Trump says they do. There are no benchmarks. There are no parameters for success here. Trump can say it's working if it's politically expedient for him to tell you it's working. He can tell you it's not working if it's politically expedient for him to say it's not working. And Mexico is the villain again. This decision is not going to be driven by a number of actual immigrants. It's going to be driven by Donald Trump's poll numbers versus the Democratic challengers to Donald Trump's presidency. So essentially, Trump has now tasked Mexico with delivering his campaign promises from 2016, except Mexico will never pay for this wall. Never. And that's where we started with all of this, right? Mexico's going to build the wall. Mexico's going to pay for this wall. I guarantee you, Mexico, they don't know it yet, but Mexico's going to pay for the wall. Mexico is not paying for a wall. All in all, he's just another dick with no wall. Nixon. He's Nixon with a secret plan. That's it. That's all that happened. You know how most people get from Guatemala to the southern border of the United States? Do you know how they get there? Do you have any idea how they get there? Yeah, they take a bus. That's how they get there. Okay? They take a freaking bus through Mexico. I got to tell you that the real solution to our immigration problem at the border, all these people at the border, is sending down more immigration judges to adjudicate, because most asylum claims will be rejected. And if we had more judges to hear those claims, it could go much more quickly than it goes now. Trump doesn't want judges. Trump wants the issue. That's a fact. He doesn't have the authority to level tariffs against anybody. If he wanted to impose sanctions, well, there's something you could discuss. But tariffs are a mechanism that only Congress can deploy. And it's used for the reason for tariffs, because, you know, under NAFTA, there are no tariffs. It's a free trade agreement. So the reason, he would be in violation of our current law if he imposed tariffs on Mexico, right? And the Senate would never let him do it. The Mexicans understand that. And they know they're not really facing tariffs because the Republicans will have a veto-proof majority to keep him from doing it. That's just reality. So nothing's going to happen unless we do it. And we have comprehensive immigration reform. We have it. The Gang of Eight hashed it out. It was a bipartisan bill. It's been sitting there since 2013. When John Boehner, who's now so high on Merlot and the marijuana that he could barely remember that he was Speaker of the House, he refused to take up the bipartisan piece of legislation called comprehensive immigration reform that the Senate had worked really hard on. And then after Boehner left, Boehner leaves, and he's now, trying to get your money to invest in some marijuana conglomerates or whatever he's trying to do. And so the House passes the clean DACA bill, and Mitch McConnell won't take it up in the Senate. And the reason is because the GOP likes this issue. They have no interest in solving the problem. The real solution to the problem is getting very involved in the Northern Triangle. And what does Trump do? Trump ends aid to the Northern Triangle as if somehow magically that is going to straighten out their crime problem. That's going to straighten out the poverty problem by decreasing the amount of investment we make. You know, the reason why you don't have a lot of Mexicans coming over the southern border, and the reason why we're talking about Honduran housewives and Guatemalans, is because we partnered with Mexico to help Mexico be a modern country to stop the immigration flow. And another little point I have to draw your attention to. Under the current law that we have that does not include comprehensive immigration reform, because Mitch McConnell has no interest in doing comprehensive immigration reform, just like Boehner had no interest in doing comprehensive immigration reform because they like the issue. Under the current law, Obama was faced with the same sort of an increase in immigration, in border crossings. And I don't know, through his magicalness, he was able to take down the number of people illegally crossing the border. Isn't that something? Using our current law and no threat of illegal tariffs and not undoing treaties to which we are signatories or threatening to, fire and fury or any of the other chaos crap that this president actually deploys to create a problem. Obama was able to task his Border Patrol guys and his Department of Homeland Security to get immigration under control. Isn't that something? And now immigration is at a 12-year high under this president. Job creation is dismal, and immigration's at a 12-year high. And all he talks about is, I have a piece of paper. It's a secret deal.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Well, I heard Biden, who's a loser. I mean, look, Joe never got more than 1%, except Obama took him off the trash heap, and now it looks like he's failing. Look, when a man has to mention my name 76 times in a speech, that means he's in trouble. Now, I have to tell you, he's a different guy. He looks different than he used to. He acts different than he used to. He's even slower than he used to be. So I don't know. But no, I'd rather run against, I think, Biden than anybody. I think he's the weakest mentally. And I like running against people that are weak mentally. I think Joe is the weakest up here. The other ones have much more energy. I don't agree with their policies, but I think Joe is a man who is, I call him 1% Joe, because until Obama came along, he didn't do very well. But look, but I don't bring him up.
I'm telling you, he's off the hook today. He is literally off the hook today. He's trashing everybody. He called John Dean a loser. He's, just so you know, this is the Hillary 2.0 campaign that Trump's going to wage. He's calling Joe Biden low energy. He's calling him dumb. He's saying he's corrupt and maybe he needs to go to jail. He's saying he's in poor health. He's not the same. He's slower. He doesn't look well. This is the same campaign that he ran against Hillary Clinton. And so, don't expect, too much from Trump. Just expect the same old from Trump. And, the thing about Donald Trump is he's going to create even more chaos, even more emergencies. I mean, look what he did with North Korea, okay? So North Korea, he started screaming fire and fury and we're going to have to bomb the crap out of them and blah, 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 and all this. And he created this chaos in the world where Americans, especially people in Guam and Hawaii, actually were scared to death that North Korea was about to launch a nuclear attack on American territories. And Donald Trump fed into that and provoked it and tweeted about it and did all this crap to scare the bejesus out of Americans, right? And then he decided that he would solve the problem that didn't exist by going there and saying he should win a Nobel Peace Prize. And then today we find out that Kim Jong-un literally had his brother-in-law executed because he believed his brother-in-law was some CIA guy and Trump defended him. This is so twisted and so bizarre and so weird, and he's doing the same damn thing with Mexico when it's clear that Obama was able to do something at the border to calm it down, to get things, and of course it involves getting involved in the Northern Triangle, and it involves getting involved in border security, and it involves comprehensive immigration reform. And Obama had a bill, but of course, Boner wouldn't introduce it. He wouldn't do anything about it. Now he's going to create this crisis and turn around. And if it's a crisis, it's a humanitarian crisis. It's not a national security emergency. All right, it's not. It's a humanitarian crisis at the border, and he will tweet about it in secret deals. I got to tell you, just to finish up what we were talking about in the first hour, it looks like the Washington Post has a photographer, an amazing photographer named Habib Botsford, and he snapped a picture of Donald Trump's paper that he whipped out of his pocket there in his jacket, and they were able to reveal the contents of the document that he was waving around this morning, where he says he's got a secret plan. This, see that there?
That's the agreement that everybody says I don't have. So, no, because I'm going to let Mexico do the announcement at the right time.
Okay, so that piece of paper was photographed by Habib Botsford of the Washington Post, and the Washington Post was able to post its contents. And it says, okay, and this is so bizarre. It says that the government of Mexico will take all necessary steps under domestic law to bring the agreement into force with a view to ensuring that the agreement will enter into force within 45 days. And then it says something unreadable, and it says other party. And then it says the parties further intend, unreadable, an agreement, unreadable, to burden sharing in relation to the processing of refugees. Isn't that interesting? Mexico calls the immigrants refugees. And thank you. And there it is. And the United States calls them illegals. Isn't that a difference right there? Yeah. Mexico also commits to immediately unreadable domestic laws and regulations with a view to identifying any changes, unreadable, to bring into force and implement such an agreement. If the United States determines at its discretion, and after consultation with Mexico, after 45 calendar days from the date of the issuance of joint declaration, that the measures adopted by government of Mexico pursuant to the joint declaration have not sufficiently achieved results in addressing the flow of migrants to the southern border of the United States, the government of Mexico will take all necessary steps under domestic law to bring the agreement into force with a view to ensuring that the agreement will enter into force in 45 days. I'm not a lawyer. I do have an honorary law degree, but that is just a repetition of a 45-day agreement to review things in 45 days. That's all that is. And the question was, who signed it? Did you see that? Did you see that, everybody? It was our electricity. Yeah, because there's a big black cloud out there. It's actually very, very nice and cool right now. It went from like 99 degrees to, like 80 and breezy, but there's a big, giant storm above us. Anyway, so the first question, obviously, is the document legitimate and who signed it? So the observations that the photographer in the Washington Post, Aaron Blake, was able to decipher is that it is signed by two people, but neither one of the signatures are from the country's respective presidents. They're not even from top diplomats. They're not signatures of ambassadors to the other country. They appear to belong to, these are the signatures I'm showing you on the screen. So it looks like it's Marek String for the United States. He's the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary for Political Military Affairs. This is like the E-team, right? And Alejandro Alcantara, a deputy legal advisor in Mexico's foreign ministry. Now, they say there could be other signatures because the paper is folded into thirds, but the signatures appear to come before the fold, 2/3 of the way through the document. Now, they refer to the people who are coming from their southern border as refugees, and we refer to them as illegals, which I think is fascinating. And it's also not clear from the text what agreement, what an agreement looks like, smells like, sounds like, beyond a 45-day agreement to review the border in 45 days. I mean, it just keeps saying 45 days. It says, the third paragraph suggests that there's something the United States can trigger after 45 days, but that it would be up to the Mexican government to put it into effect in the next 45 days. So I'm guessing the Mexican Senate is going to have to vote on some damn thing, but we don't know what. Now, I know that they want this third country agreement, which means that, refugees coming up from, Guatemala could have, could be treated as refugees in Mexico, and that those refugees would have to apply for a visa for status in Mexico before they could make an asylum claim in the United States. That, I believe, is what they're trying to achieve. I don't know that that will ever happen because Mexico cannot do that. And the Mexican people will not, they will not allow it. So I don't know. But it just looks like it's a 45-day review period. I don't know. I can tell you our National Guard is very busy painting fences and fixing electrical problems in Border Patrol automobiles, and welding is what they're doing. And of course, the answer is very simple. If you have a problem with the slow pace of claims of asylum, wouldn't you want to have more judges hearing claims of asylum? Because we all know that most claims of asylum aren't granted. So there is an easy fix, and this president is threatening fake tariffs that he doesn't have the authority to impose, that the Senate will override any veto saying he does have that power, and the House is never going to go for it. So it's just so stupid. This is all about 2020. That's what it's about, and he wants this issue, and that is that.
all things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I don't want to be a downer, but I will say this. If you take the time to read the Mueller report, actually read it, which all of us in this auditorium are more than capable of doing, you come to two inescapable conclusions. The first is that Russia conducted a sweeping and systemic interference in our election. The second is that obstruction of justice occurred. Now, you cannot read the report chapter and verse, fact after fact, without reaching those conclusions.
All right. So Hillary Clinton, who was the target of Russian military intelligence, she just finished or has made her way through the Mueller report, and obviously we're about to have a redo of 2016 with Russia and now maybe even Mexico, helping Donald Trump's electability. I mean, it's just like amazing. But we're going to have our debates very, very soon, June 26th and 27th. Okay. And so they have announced today who the moderators will be. And what's interesting is one of the moderators who moderated the first general election debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, Lester Holt, is going to be one of the moderators for this debate. And this debate will take, this debate's going to take 2 days because we have 10 candidates per night. So the debate is 2 weeks away. And from the number of Democrats that are going to be on the debate stage, I would say the debates are going to take about 2 weeks also. You know what I mean? It's just 10 candidates per night, You think they'll give out like participation trophies the way we do for millennials at soccer games? You think they will? I don't know. There's only 20 slots, everybody. There's only 20, but there's 23 candidates. So can I just say that if you come out 21st out of 23, it's kind of hard to complain that you're not included, but they will. I think Kirsten Gillibrand was about to be lopped off of the debates, and somehow she managed to get herself on the stage, so she will be there. And here's the thing. To qualify, this is unbelievable. To qualify, candidates had to receive more than 65,000 individual donations, including from 200 unique donors per state in at least 20 states, or at least 1% in 3 polls approved by the DNC. Now, anybody that really understands those rules, they're equipped to be president because they understand bureaucracy. The DNC, this is just like, wow, really? These are the rules. So you had 65,000 individual donations, including from 200 unique donors per state in at least 20 states, or at least 1% in 3 polls approved by the DNC. My question for the candidates is going to be, how did you understand what it took to qualify? Really, no. I think the best question would be, which one are you again? Which one? Which one are you? It's going to be crazy, but it sure beats having just one candidate who's dim-witted and crazy, which seems to be the Republican approach. It looks to me like there will only be one. I mean, I know Bill Weld is trying to primary Donald Trump, but seriously. So they're going to have one dimwit and then 20 of us. And, the debate should be, I'm looking forward to it because I got to tell you, I won't make up my mind until after a few debates have occurred. But as I've said, if I had to pick one right now, my money would go to Elizabeth Warren. I just think that she's bold. I think she's modern. I think she's emotionally sound. I think she's brilliant. And, Biden's support is kind of shaky. And I know a lot of people think Biden is the safe one. Biden's the, but just look. I mean, Donald Trump is going to deploy the Hillary Clinton 2.0 campaign against Biden. We already heard him today. He's dumb. His kids are corrupt. What about China? What about Ukraine? What about his son? He doesn't look healthy. He's slower than he used to be. I'm telling you, it's going to be the same campaign all over again. And Biden, I don't know. Today he gave a little talk. He went to he's in Iowa. He went to a community event. Now, of course, they had this big rousing rally with all of our candidates. I think 19 of the 20 showed up in Iowa, and they all addressed audiences. They answered a lot of questions. Elizabeth Warren, she had all kinds of policy proposals. She had 1,700 people at a community college gym. She's attracting larger crowds and larger crowds. She talks about ethics rules on Supreme Court justices. She talked about a dozen policy initiatives. She talked about politicians releasing their tax returns. She talked about a wealth tax on fortunes worth more than $50 million and how much that would raise. That would raise $2.7 trillion over 10 years. She talked about if you repealed the Trump tax giveaway that we just lived through, that would raise another $1.2 trillion. I mean, she says how she's going to pay for everything. People have been flocking to her events in the early voting states. She's got a nonstop stream of policy positions. And, she's the Des Moines Register, CNN, and Media.com published over the weekend combined probable caucus goers, first and second choice. And it's Warren and Biden. Biden has the edge in the first choice category with 24%. And Warren's behind him at 15. Those are people who describe Warren as their first choice. So 24% describe Biden as their first choice. 15 describe Warren as their first choice. 16% are picking Bernie for their first choice. And Pete Buttigieg is right behind at 14% as the probable Iowa caucus goers' first choice. So, it's just started. It's very early. I think that we're starting to see who, the top 4 or the top 5 candidates are for us. And, I think Biden is, starting to middle. Do you know what I mean? I think that he's starting to just, middle out. Looks like in December, before he announced that he was going to run, 33% of Iowa voters said they backed him. And now, about 6 weeks after he announced he would run, his support has faded by about a third. And that's why he's at 24%. So he started at 33 as a generic Democrat. And I have to say, in every polling matchup between Donald Trump and a generic Democrat, the generic Democrat wins. You can't get much more generic than Joe Biden. Although Joe Biden has figured out a way to take his support from 33% down to 24% in just 6 short weeks. So stay tuned. What can I tell you? I think it was the flip-flop on the Hyde Amendment, so we'll see. But Warren, Buttigieg, Bernie, and Kamala Harris seem to be the top.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. Oh. My fault. All right, Denzel in Missouri.
Yes, how you doing, Randi?
How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm well.
I think you are great, and I trust you because you have earned it.
Thank you.
Okay? Every time I hear your voice, every time I hear Trump speak, I think of what you said years ago in Air America. Okay? I remember you saying America can only be destroyed from within.
That's right.
I remember you saying that, And recently you said go get some passports. So I have gone to get three. I put in applications for 3 passports for me, my wife, and our last child that's inside the house.
Oh.
So, and Randy, I have 2 questions. Okay, 2 quick questions. Okay.
Yeah.
First question is, I want to know if you think that I'm a bad person. Okay.
Oh my God.
The thing is, okay, in 2016, okay, we had the black president and everything, and black people, what we wanted most was something tangible. Okay? Just one thing for us. It could have been anything. What we wanted the most was to have some protection from the police.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm 46, okay? So I grew up in the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. And I've lost 5 friends to the police. Okay? So most of us have gone, and we haven't been, untouched by that, okay?
Yeah.
So,
I
understand it. I'm sorry.
My mouse is broken. I can't control anything. Go ahead.
Okay, so basically what I was saying was, okay, a lot of us had questions about or who should we vote for and things like that. Now I'm thinking about Elizabeth Warren. But because we didn't get, we didn't get anything specific from the black president, what we thought, we were at a loss. We've always given, like you said, with that story, that unbelievable story you did, was the history of black Americans in America. Okay? When you did that on Air America, that's when me and my wife fell in love with you.
What story was it?
You did the history of black Americans in America. You went through the story of black Americans from the time we got here till now.
I see.
Okay, you took 2 days, you've done that. You did that without anybody forcing you to do that, and you laid out the story exactly the way it was. Mm-hmm. Okay? So you have earned our trust. So basically my question was if we decide that we want to vote locally and not vote for the presidency because we haven't gotten anything tangible to basically help us, like, for instance, making it to where the police can't arrest you for simple traffic infractions and things like that, or giving you more money to pay because you're poor in the first place. Okay? And do you think that we're bad people if we decided to if the person that we want to vote for this time doesn't make it, and we decide, say if it's Joe Biden, and we decide not to vote for him, would that make us a bad person, or would that make me a bad person?
I see. So you're asking me if your individual interests,
yes,
should be greater than preserving the Constitution.
No. I'm for preserving the Constitution.
Well, you can't preserve it with another term of Donald Trump, because he's already destroying it. I mean, he just whips it out and dribbles all over it. Okay, the man has no respect for the 3 co-equal branches of government. He has no respect for subpoenas. He has no respect. He has no respect for courts. Okay, he has no respect for his adversaries. Okay, he doesn't even respect them as being worthy. He is a person who literally the court could order him to, produce this or that, and he will defy it. And he will, so you can't preserve the Constitution by not voting for somebody who would displace him.
Okay, now on that note, Randy, now we both know that if he were to lose the election, he's not going to leave because, like you said, he's going to jail.
So listen to what.
Okay. So does Congress have to do their job?
So listen to what you just said. What you just said. Never mind what I just said. Just listen to what you just said. You believe that you have a lawless president, a president so corrupt and so disconnected from the American rule of law, that even if he loses, he will have to be removed from office because he will not voluntarily pass peacefully power to another. Now, if that's the case, and you're asking me, does it make you a bad person if you don't vote, then the answer clearly is yes.
No. I clearly plan to vote. I just meant if I decided not to vote.
I was writing it down as you were discussing it with me, and you said that if it were Joe Biden, you might pass because you don't believe that Joe Biden is, modern enough to right the wrongs. Okay, he's not sort of a Brown versus Board guy. You know what I mean? He's not a person who would, stick his neck out for, moving into the 21st century. He's more of a 20th century dude. And so you would opt out. And so
I have a hard time.
I'm sorry. And so you asked me, does it make you a bad person if you don't vote because you don't want to vote for Biden? And I'm working through that question with you. And you then told me that that Donald Trump is a president who you feel disrespects the peaceful transfer of power, the constitutional norms in this country, so much so that you feel like he's going to have to be taken from office if he loses an election. And so the question...
Now, Congress...
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Now, me not really having any power to do anything to Donald Trump, our government does. Okay, and they refuse to.
Your vote your vote is your power. Your vote is your power. And if you throw that away and then ask me, does that make you powerless? I'd have to say yes. Or if you said that you don't want to vote, which is basically a vote for Donald Trump to stay, and you ask me, does that make you, a bad person? The answer's clear. It's yes. You follow?
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I follow.
So we have a primary, right? We have a primary process. We have 20 candidates at least to pick from. By the time the primary rolls around to you in Missouri, you're probably going to be down to 3, 4. Go vote in the primary and make sure that you select somebody who you feel is bold and promising on your issues.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, I understand what Denzel is saying. I understand completely. And if you saw this video yesterday, this video became public yesterday. It's just heartbreaking what goes on in our streets. That we just sit there and pretend that everything is just okay, and it's not okay. There are, families that have to have the talk with their young sons. People are not safe to move about this country, even if they're law-abiding, even if they're unarmed. I mean, it's just so interesting. You got people showing up at protests with, multiple weapons. People showing up at Walmart with multiple weapons, and they're allowed to move freely about the country. Here, what you're going to see is a young black man who this is kind of what Denzel's talking about. This is a young black man who is unarmed, okay? And the police stop him, and you won't believe the enormous number of police officers that are tasked with arresting this young man who is unarmed and on his knees, and that a woman who had also lost her fiancé to a police shooting happened to be on the scene. Her name is Jay. She happened to be on the scene, and she is coaching this young man and telling him how to stay still and telling him how to avoid being killed by this enormous show of firepower used against him while he's on his knees and unarmed. This is heartbreaking.
We are on the corner of Prairie and El Segundo, and they have their guns drawn on this young black man right here. Why are your guns pulled on this young man?
I ain't got no weapons.
He has no weapons on him. We live right now. We are so live. What's your name?
They attacked me.
What's
at the gas station, they attacked me.
What's your name? What's your name?
Make sure you add that.
What's your
My name is William.
last name, William?
What you loaded for? I ain't doing shit. I have no weapons. I'm gonna kill an unarmed black man.
Are you gonna shoot him? Are you gonna shoot him?
What?
Okay, relax, baby. Relax. Relax, because they will shoot you. They killed my boyfriend in 2015. Yes, he was killed by the police. You're gonna shoot me too, right? For filming, right?
Look at her pointing that weapon.
Big ass gun she got on this man with no weapon. Is all that really necessary, ma'am? I'm sorry. I just need to know. Is all the guns drawn on him necessary? Excuse me, Mr. Officer. My name is Sky Hosey. My boyfriend name was Leroy Browning, and he was killed December 15th at a Taco Bell. This is crazy to me. Look, my car is right there. I was getting gas. I don't understand why y'all got guns drawn on him right now. Are y'all about to kill this man? Like, look at these big ass guns they got on this man right now. Look at this baby. Look at this baby.
Stand up and walk slowly to the sound of my voice. Do it now.
Can y'all just put your guns away and somebody get them?
My name is William, not suspect.
Don't move. Don't move. Please don't move. Can somebody just come get him? Can somebody put your guns down and get him, please? Don't resist him, okay?
She saved his life. I don't know how she stayed so composed, but she finally broke down at the end. I mean, the amount of firepower aimed at this man, who was a young man, on his knees with his hands behind his head. And his hands, obviously, you know, at another point are wide open to show that there's no weapon at all. He has no weapon upon him. I don't know why they pulled him over. I don't know why he was on his knees. That is where the telephone, the recording started on her phone. And obviously, she had been at a Taco Bell with her boyfriend, whose name she gives, who was killed by police doing nothing at a Taco Bell. And so she is telling this young man, don't move, and begging the police to put their guns away and just go get him, just go arrest him if that's what they had in mind. Why are all these guns pulled on him? Why is this man on his knees with his hands behind his neck in a very submissive position? And then, because she's filming and giving this young man advice, don't move, can you please just put the guns down and go get him? If you want, go get him, just go get him. Don't resist, please. They killed my boyfriend. Why is that America? Why does it look that way? What is the deal with this? And we all know that if he had been shot and it was captured on the video, we all would have seen it. It would have been on the TV for about a day. The parents would have been interviewed. The lawyer would have shown up with the parents. The police officer would have been suspended with pay. And then 4 years later, either the police officer would be back on the force, or he would be given a pass, and the family would then have to go to a civil court to try and hold this person or these people who shot their son, who was unarmed, on his knees, accountable, and perhaps money damages would be awarded after 10 years of fighting for justice. Why is that okay? Why is that okay with anybody in this country? And you have a president who stands on a stage with law enforcement and says, I see when you put somebody in the car, you protect their head. I don't like that you protect their head. I want you to be rougher with them. Now, they, in the them sentence, is that kid. And that kid is guilty of nothing at all. Because he hasn't been charged with anything. He hasn't been arraigned. He hasn't, had a trial or entered into a plea agreement. Nothing has happened that this kid should give his life for. And nothing has happened at all when somebody is arrested for a taillight being out or for going through a red light, which, I'm not for it. You haven't been adjudicated guilty of anything, so why do we have a president that advocates to treat the innocent person who's been convicted of no crime more rough than that? You see, and that's why, Denzel, I have to say to you in the most respectful way, because I get what you face every day. I don't face it myself. I totally understand that I'm pasty white and there's a privilege that travels around this country with me that you don't have. I totally know it. I get it. I feel it. I understand it. And I will fight to my dying day to make everyone understand it as best as I can. But if you don't vote, especially for this crop of candidates who haven't even had we haven't had a result of a primary yet, and clearly there are candidates who are for criminal justice reform. Clearly there are candidates who understand what is wrong with policing in America. Clearly on the Democratic side, there are candidates that get it, that know it, that understand it, that are willing to change it. And if you don't get the one who is the top proponent of criminal justice reform, although I will say this, Joe Biden, I mean, you know the crime bill, and you know the story of the crime bill, and you know that Hillary Clinton had to answer for her vote on the crime bill, and Joe Biden will as well. And I get that. I understand that. But also know that in that crime bill was the Violence Against Women Act, which is currently expired in this country. And Mitch McConnell will not take it up in the Senate to renew it. And also there was a ban on assault weapons in that crime bill in 1994. And the only way they got it passed was to put a sunset provision in it, so it only lasted 10 years. And here we are back with assault weapons and mass shootings all over again. But there is one party that actually made the compromise. The 3 strikes, you're out, which is what the Republicans wanted, and the crack cocaine disparity over the powder cocaine disparity. But in exchange, they got an assault weapons ban and the Violence Against Women Act, which, by the way, those 2 laws have expired. Clearly, not voting is not an option. And I'm glad you called. I'm glad we had the conversation early, because right now there are 23 candidates. Choose